Welcome to A Lunch with Biggie, a podcast about small business and creatives sharing their stories and inspiring you. My guest today is a strength-based coach and consultant, but not a physical fitness strength-based coach, a Gallup certified Clifton strength-based coach. Think of your talent as DNA or a super, like you're kind of almost like supernatural superpowers. Please welcome my friend, former college roommate, and owner of Kayan Ambler Consulting, Gary Kayan. What's going on, Gary?
Hello, Biggie. How are we? This is exciting.
I love this, dude. We've known each other for so long, and this is one of those like I'm not gonna lie, I've been looking forward to trying to do something like this with you, because I've always enjoyed having conversations, and I think this would be a fun topic and just a fun thing to be able to have you on as a guest. So I really appreciate you coming on, and I guess my first question always is, what's your go-to lunch or sandwich?
That's as an avid listener of the Lunch with Biggie podcast, I've been waiting for this question for a while, and um, I know you're sitting down, right? Or
Yeah,
do you have a
yeah.
standing
I'm
desk? You're
sitting up.
sitting
I'm
down.
sitting.
I don't eat a lot of sandwiches these
Yeah,
days, so it's like confessing that
yeah, yeah,
to
yeah.
someone who that might hurt you. But I was thinking about like what sandwich do I eat the most, and by volume, the sandwich I find myself eating the most is the four edges of a grilled cheese sandwich, because I have an 8-year-old and he has not developed the palate for a
For
good
crust.
crust. And so, like,
Okay.
if he's eating pizza, Dad, here's the crust. So
Yep.
I'll make him grilled cheese. And um, because I know going in, he's going to give me the crust, I take care of the crust. Like, I bleed the cheese out to the edge. I like,
I
on the
love it.
cooking shows, because I
Yeah.
don't do this, they have like the big pork loin and they got to brown it on all four sides before they
Yep.
put it in the oven. That's me with the grilled cheese. I have it like up on its edge so that it congeals, and I don't know,
He's like,
whatever the,
so you get like a good toasty, crunchy
yeah. And if there's
edge.
like bacon in it or turkey in it, like when I'm now slicing those four edges off, it's it's like a meal, like it's
Yeah.
an appetizer. Like I did that
Yeah.
on purpose, and my wife will see me doing it, and she's taught me a lot of things about cooking, but like to put mayonnaise inside the crust
Yep.
when you're making the grilled
Yep.
cheese, it gives it just that extra
Yep. The oil
flavor,
based.
and that,
Yeah.
yeah, it gets it to like caramelize in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So by volume, I probably have eaten like 100 grilled cheese sandwiches in the last 8 years without actually sitting down to intentionally eat a grilled cheese sandwich. So that's current day. I could
Okay.
probably go back in history and talk about my favorite sandwiches of yore, but
What? Let's. So if it's not okay, because I know I say sandwich and everyone goes sandwich, but like if it's not sandwich, what's like a typical lunch or go to lunch that you usually like?
I mean, as you know, I'm more of a wrap guy than a
Yes.
sandwich guy in more ways than one. But um, I Monday, Tuesdays, my wife, my wife, Lauren, she's
Yeah.
wonderful. She loves to cook and she's great at it. So lunch for us is usually leftovers on like Monday, Tuesday. Wednesday, I kind of have a rotating group of fast casual restaurants on the east side of Orlando that I go to with my boss. And then end of the week, it's like I'll just bring a tortilla wrap and some grilled chicken
Yep.
and some condiments, throw that all in there. Lunch for me is a little bit more just like the energy I need to get me to dinner.
Yep.
And then dinner is like, that's where the flavor is going to come in.
Yeah, no, I agree with you, and that's usually how it is for me. Like I tell people, I'm like, do not judge me during the course of the week when I make a sandwich. Like I literally just I made a quick sandwich, and it was literally just the end of a bread, some mayonnaise, and I threw the last slice of turkey, and I literally grabbed it, folded
Hmm.
it, and just ate it. And I was like, we're good, let's go.
Have we
So
ever
I
talked
totally get
about
that.
like, your final wish? Like, not that either of us would ever be on death row, but like, as I've seen in the movies, they're like, what's your final meal? If it had to be a
Uh,
sandwich and they're like, Biggie, tomorrow's the big day. What can we bring you? I know what mine
yeah.
is.
What is yours?
I'm having bagels and lox.
Okay.
Like from Essa Bagel in Manhattan, with the bagels and the capers and the cream cheese and the onions and the just that's my favorite thing to eat. And if I went out on that, even though clearly I would have been innocent, at least I would have enjoyed that sandwich.
Okay. I it would depend. I guess it's a mixture of things. I have a feeling like it would either be maybe a meal. Like I know obviously everyone would think I would say sandwich. I probably would have something that if my mom was still alive, probably something that my mom would make would probably be something that I would probably do.
Okay.
Um, is one of them. But I mean, obviously, like I'll never say no to a go to. Like I'll never say no if you said, okay, you're gonna get, like, even though I'm not Italian, like a chicken parm or a meatloaf. I could have definitely a meatloaf sandwich. I think that would be great. I definitely would have some kind of ice cream cookie sandwich. I
Oh,
always
okay.
jokingly told Gideon's and Kelly's that I would do. That would be one of the things I would have. I would have two Gideon's cookies with their vanilla ice cream, and make it into like an ice cream cookie sandwich. That would be like the goat. That would be my dessert, because I'm
Lots
like,
of
I'm gonna die of diabetes then if I eat that, or die of sugar shock. So I might as well just do that.
lots of flaws in our criminal justice and penitentiary system, but I feel like they could pull that off. They
Oh yeah, I definitely
Oh, you
think they
need the
could.
Gideon's cookie? Yeah, we'll
Yeah,
we'll
well, we can
we'll
do
send
that for
someone
you.
out.
Okay, so I brought it up in the intro, and I want to talk a little bit about it because I know you're like a Gallup certified strength coach. What is that? And then tell me a little bit about how from that you went into and decided to create, Kane Ambler Consulting.
Yeah, I guess first I'll start talking about coaching.
Yeah.
And coaching is kind of an emerging industry over the last 20 years. There's a lot of organizations that accredit coaching bodies and certifications, but it's also a little bit like the wild, wild west. Like tomorrow, someone could say, hey, I'm a life coach, I'm a success coach, I'm a business coach, I'm a well being coach. And most are very well intentioned. And there's actually a need in the marketplace from a mental health perspective, as overwhelmed as mental health counselors who are dealing with um, the forward thinking, or the trying to help someone through crises and dealing with difficult circumstances that individuals and couples face. Coaching is intended to be preventative, right? It's intended to be positive. It's that upstream approach where if I can help someone and equip them with the well-being skills or the leadership skills or whatever it may be, they're going to be more successful, they're going to be happier, and it's going to help prevent some of that long-term need for counseling. They can go hand in hand. And then there's consulting and advising and mentoring. And so when I my background in my career is I've worked in higher education for over 20 years. I've worked in student success and well-being programs. I started out as a frontline programmer. Now I'm in a position where I help a leadership team manage about 50 full-time professionals and about 500 part-time employees at one of the largest public institutions in the country. And so team dynamics has been very interesting to me. And I also have experience over the last 15 years being an adjunct faculty member and being in the classroom and teaching. And so I've been able to do a lot of different things within the educational system. And so coaching was not something I needed a lot of training in. I do it every day. I
Yeah.
advise, I help people get to where they want to go. But my undergrad degree was in psychology. So I was always fascinated with human behavior. And my master's degree is in educational leadership and higher education and policy studies. And in about 2011, it was going to be the first time I was asked to supervise another professional. I didn't know what I was doing, like a lot of people, the first time they're in a managerial role. And my leader sent me to a conference in Nebraska where the Gallup organization at the University of Nebraska Lincoln was kind of founded, and where Don Clifton, who Clifton Strengths was named after, did 50 years of research to develop this Clifton Strengths tool. I learned about it, and it just made total sense to me. Um, I had learned in my psychology undergrad about Myers Briggs and disc
Yeah.
profile and big five personality factors and all the different assessments that help you, whether it's personality or cognitive, to understand yourself better. This one gave me a language to understand who I am
Mm-hmm.
and how to connect with other people to learn who they are and how we could be more effective as a team and how we can thrive as individuals. And I'll get into a lot more about
Yeah.
it a little bit later, but after that experience, I started using it internal to my organization, and I started doing some speaking engagements and workshops, just kind of pro bono, just helping groups out. I didn't realize at the time I was doing consulting. I was providing some expertise, and it got to a point where I decided, hey, let me get certified by the Gallup organization. The Gallup organization's been around since the 1930s. They're known for their public opinion polls and their educational research and consulting. You hear on the news probably every week, Gallup um, says that 40% of people believe haunted houses are real. Like they,
Yeah.
they do research on everything. And it's one of the gold standard coaching certifications that are out there. So I was able to complete that process, and that allows me not only to do organizational consulting, team workshops, which is the thing I do the most. But the thing I've gotten into more recently is individual coaching, helping people solve problems based on this assessment where they've learned about themselves and now they want to know, hey, what's next and what can I do with this? So that's kind of the genesis of my business. I
Yeah.
started it about a year ago. It's just me, and I have just used my network to connect with as many people as possible. And fortunately, some folks have been very excited about the programs I've put on, and I'm continuing to get more interest.
I love it, man. It's I will say it's very interesting because like I do think like and kind of like what you've read I've read some of your blog posts and stuff like that, which I appreciated. I enjoyed how you've incorporated everything from like athletes to movies and superheroes and things like that. And one of the things that I thought was interesting is like we all have like a talent DNA, and obviously all of us have our strengths, and what better way to not what better to not than to actually know what your strengths are so that you can harness those powers to actually succeed. So I kind of tell me a little bit more about it, because I know there's like I believe there's 34 of them. There's 34 Clifton strengths, and they kind of fall under like four domains, right? So there's like
Yeah.
a strategic thinking, relationship building, influencing, and then I think there's like executing are like the four. But talk a little bit about those 34 and like how it kind of compromise, like how it kind of builds, or what you kind of do to get that information, and what that information then provides you once you have that.
Look at you, Biggie. You did your homework. I'm impressed.
I try to research.
I I would say going back to the beginning, Don Clifton was a fighter pilot in World War II, and he came back and he just there's a story I read that he went to the University of Nebraska library. He was interested in psychology and human behavior, and all the research was about disorder, things that were wrong with people. And he said, wouldn't it be great if instead of focusing on what's wrong with us, that we could develop a body of research and knowledge to figure out what all good leaders have in common, what talents people have in common. And so he spent over 40 years researching this. And so, there's lots of assessments out there. Like you can go on BuzzFeed and it's like, which friend's character are you?
Yeah.
I'm clearly Joey. Uh, you're what are you, Chandler?
I'm
Um,
probably a Chandler.
so you could do tests that are for fun, or you could do tests that have uh, empirical validity, tests that have been brought through the rigorous process of the psychometric evaluation. I'm teaching like the research professor that I can be sometimes, but it has a lot of test retest reliability, and so it's been used by 32 million people over the last 25 years all over the world at all different levels. And so they were able to gather all this information and kind of sort into these four different domains. There is the relationship building domain, which of those 34 categories, they're not those themes, they're not split evenly, but some fall in that relationship building theme. Relationship building is just all about how you connect with other people, how you work with other people, your communication, um, the depth that you have, whether it's the quantity or quantity of relationships. Then there's executing themes. It's really how we get stuff done, how you organize yourself, how you prioritize, how you focus, and how you make things happen. There's influencing themes, influencing talents. And so that's kind of how you get other people to do things, right? I always think about who are the people on social media doing silly dances and product placements. They're the influencers, and their
Yeah.
job is to sell and to convince and to get their message across. And then finally, there's the strategic thinking talents that are all about planning and analyzing and assessing. And what I always like to say, because some people are assessment skeptics, and there's some assessments that you should be rightfully skeptical of. And this is one that I think it's very fair to be skeptical. It's a self assessment. You're not walking into a psychiatrist's office and getting a battery of assessments done. But again, it's a very rigorous, well constructed test, and it's telling you based on what information you shared, um, basically what you told it, right? It's telling you here are the things you shared with me, and I'm organizing it in a way to help it make sense for you, and I'm ordering these talents from 1 to 34. And these top five that we're giving you at the outset, as you said, those are your superpowers. Those are the
Yeah.
things that you don't have to think much about. That's like riding a bike. That's like, the things that are when you're driving the car and you flip on the turn signal, you don't have to think about it. It's just
Yeah, it just
in
comes
your,
naturally.
yeah, it's easy. It's wired in you. Those neural pathways were set and locked in. Those are your natural patterns of thinking, feeling, and behaving. Whereas the things that are further down the list, for me, it's like writing with my left hand. I can do it. All human beings have all 34 talents, but it's an order of intensity. So I like to talk about energy. And there's things in everyone's work, everyone's business, everyone's life that gives them energy. And you want to be doing the things that give you energy and not drain your energy, right?
Yeah.
And so we'll talk about your strengths in a little bit, but you have communication as a talent. So being in this platform and putting your thoughts into words and sharing what you think with people, I imagine that's very exciting for you. And you could probably do this all day long, is just, tell
Probably.
people what you think.
Yeah.
Um, Whereas I'm an introvert. And so it's a little bit, I can behave in a certain way. Um, we talked about this beforehand. We have some talents that are at the opposite end of the spectrum. That's a good thing.
Yeah.
If you and I worked together and we had a project and the manager said, "Hey, Gary Biggie, I want you to come up with a plan and I want you to go present it." I would be the one that would say, "Great, I have all these strategic thinking talents. I would feel better about using my talents to put the plan together."
Yeah.
And then I would rely on your ability to use your communication, positivity, and woo to get the point across. And then collectively, we're a great team.
Yeah.
So strengths are also important to think about individually, but also in a team context. Because even the most successful solo entrepreneur who talks about, "Oh, I did this all on my own. I pulled myself up and I was a one person show." Mostly, yeah, and those people are incredibly talented, but they needed some help in some way, whether it's a teacher or the person that invented the technology that they're using or everyone who came before them that they're
Yeah.
building upon. And so when we think about talents, it's in the collective where it really shines through.
Do you so based on your studies and what you guys have seen and what you've seen, I'm kind of curious, like, are there certain talents or certain strengths that are seen in highly successful people?
uh, no. If the question is, hey, people who have ideation are always the people who are the top business leaders, or are people who have responsibility always the best executives? And no, not necessarily. um, i try to uh, I try to share with people not to think of your talents that way. Your
Yeah.
talents are unique to you,
Yeah.
and because they're unique to you, um, you're one in 33 million people that has that top five in that order. And you should think about not what you should do with those talents, but how you should do what you're already doing with those talents. Or what, if the thing that you're doing currently doesn't serve you, what else you should be doing? Because Gallup has a lot of research about employee engagement, right? I know you know a lot about this. When people show up to work, are they engaged? Are they disengaged? Are they actively disengaged? Meaning they're just there to get the paycheck and they're thinking about the next thing that they want to be doing. And it's really critical to think about people who get to use their talents every day are 6 times as likely to report that they're engaged in their work. And so if you're a business owner and you have employees, or you're working on a team in a larger organization, you'd like to think everyone wants to be there. We know that's not the reality, because across our economy, Gallup's last poll, 34% of people said, "Yeah, I get to do what I do best every day and I'm engaged in my work." And so then now 2/3 of people aren't. And so you can use these talents to think about, well, um, everyone has an opportunity to be a great leader. You have to just want to be a leader. And then you could look to your talents and go, well, actually, I'm a really good strategic thinker. Maybe I should work in something creative, or I should work in analysis, and I should work in something that allows me to exercise this. Sometimes it can be as simple as we see people, and I know you interview a lot of people that are doing really great things, whether it's as a creative or um, as a business
Yeah.
owner. And one thing I would share with them is, we sometimes get jealous because we see someone else doing it and they're maybe doing it a little bit better, or seemingly they're doing it a little bit better because they're all over LinkedIn or they're all over Instagram. And it's like, wow, they're really having success. I wonder what they have that I don't have. And we shouldn't think about, I call it like strengths hater, being jealous of other people's strengths. If you don't have that talent in your top five, it doesn't mean you don't have it. You just have to work a little bit differently. And sometimes you could leverage another talent. Sometimes you could leverage your strategic thinking talent to make up for that thing that you have to navigate that's a little bit low, further down your list.
Yeah. And then your talents, and I kind of know the answer, but I'm kind of curious. Like, your talents can change. Like, I mean, I'm assuming your top five, like they can evolve in time, correct? When you're as you go. So it's not like, I mean, you may have your top three may stay always be a top three, but you're gonna have there'll be some changes and ebbs and flows of some of those skills and talents as you continue to develop as a in what you're doing in your skills.
Yeah, absolutely. Time and distance is of the essence when it comes to this. Gallup doesn't recommend people retake the assessment unless enough time has gone by, or unless they've had a major life or career change where they feel like they're just exercising different talent muscles every day.
Yeah.
So I first took it in 2011. I took it again in 2015. I didn't know you weren't supposed to take it again in such a short time frame, and 4 out of my 5 were the same. I took it again this past, like 2 months ago. I've been working with so many clients, and I bought another book I was reading, and it came with a free assessment. I was like, it's been 9 years. Let me just see. I had to be really honest with myself. I had to make sure I wasn't trying to game the test because it is a self assessment. I could get any
Yeah.
result I wanted. Um, and even after taking it again, ideation was my number one for the third time. Adaptability was in my top five again. Relator was in my top five again. Intellection was in my top five again. The only new talent that showed up was arranger, which I was surprised by. It bumped up a little bit, but it makes sense to me because I'm in a different phase where I'm not managing a program on a day to day basis. I'm managing people.
Yeah.
And that takes a different part of my brain. It takes a different um, emphasis in my everyday life. I'm
Yeah.
also, since I last took it, I'm married. I'm a father. That changes your brain. So just like personality, intelligence, it can fluctuate. But for the most part, we know various aspects of our brain, those neural pathways, and we know in your mid 20s, the prefrontal cortex in your brain kind of locks in, and that's the part of your brain that it impacts understanding consequences and making decisions. Once you get to a certain point, and once you have I'd say a seasoned career, it's not going to change very much once you've taken it.
Yeah, that makes sense. I could totally see that. I also think that one of the great things about this, if just even learning and reading up on these Clifton strengths, is being able to kind of see. I'm pretty sure as you come across people, like I know some people do like, oh, you're Myers Briggs, and they kind of can tell whatever. I'm pretty sure that you're able to kind of see some of these things, some of these talents, and you can kind of, when you see someone or interact with someone after a while, you'd be like, oh yeah, they have these particular ones. Um, I guess my question is, and I'm always I'm curious, especially when you're coaching on either a team element or just individually, how are there different ways, and I know there are, but are there different ways in how to harness or I guess enhance those talents? Because sometimes you may have those talents, they're natural. You just don't know how to focus it in a positive direction or in the direction that you want to go in, like whatever your life's journey is.
Yeah, that's a great question, Biggie. I think um, I use talents and strengths interchangeably sometime, and a lot of strengths coaches do, but talents are your results. These are based on a collection of talents that fall under each of these labels. So, for example, you have communication in your top five. Most people understand what communication means.
Mhm.
You also have woo in your top five, and I always have to explain to people what that means. And it doesn't just mean one thing. These aren't fortune cookies, right? They're not these like self-fulfilling prophecies where you get a result and then you can just kind of make it what you want it to be.
Yeah.
There's entire chapters of books, there's entire podcasts where Gallup's data scientists can say people who have these talents tend to have this collection of behavior. One of the things that I coach people to do is go through that and see what applies to you and see what doesn't. And it's okay if it doesn't apply to you. from there, the goal is to turn that talent into a strength. And, using a sports analogy, right? Steph Curry came out of the womb a potentially talented basketball player, right? Like
Mm-hmm.
his dad is Del Curry. He played in the NBA. So, like my dad was a high school bowler. That was the peak of his athletic career. Sorry, Dad, but that's just how the genetics worked out. So I knew I wasn't going to be in the NBA when I knew what my dad's athletic talent was. But Steph probably knew at an early age, like I've got the hand-eye coordination, going to be relatively tall. I've got the quickness, I've got the agility, I've got the speed. But if he would have never worked at it, if he would have never practiced, if he would have never been invested in by other people, his parents, his coach, his teammates, he wouldn't have ultimately turned it into a strength. And so the strength is now, greatest shooting guard of all time from the 3 point line. We have the ability, like if you would have gotten these results when you were, in college, and they said, "Hey, Biggie, Woo is a talent of yours. You can win people over. You like walking into a room and connecting with new people. You like going to a market and talking to strangers and getting to know their story and being energetic and positive, and that fills your bucket."
Yep.
Um, if someone would have told you that at that formative age, a good thing to do would be get practice in those experiences. Hey, you should start networking. You should join organizations. You should get involved in the community. You should volunteer. You should put yourself out there because you're going to, need that like Malcolm Gladwell 10,000 hours to turn that into this world-class strength.
Yeah.
And that's the goal because Don Clifton has a quote that's something like, if you spend all your time trying to be good at everything, you'll never be great at anything. And it's the reality. No human being can be good at everything. Steph Curry's the greatest shooter of all time, but he's not going to block, Joel Embiid's shot.
Yeah.
He's a good passer, but he's not a great defender. We need everyone to bring their superpowers to the table. Use the the Justice League. I know you're
Yeah.
the bigger superhero guy than me. Like, you need someone who can leap tall buildings and someone who can, I don't know, have a lasso that makes people tell the truth, and someone who can, I don't know what Batman does. He just invents cool stuff, right?
He just, he's a smart guy. He's
Yeah.
strategic.
So if you collectively bring the Justice League or the Avengers or whatever group of superheroes together, they're stronger as a team as they are individually.
Yeah.
And that's how we take those raw talents. And we think, I mean, I work with college students, so I do these assessments weekly, and I sit down with them.
So you were talking about obviously like the ability of when you have a team, just like in any team, being able to actually harness all your skills together to be successful. Which I think it's something that's so important to be able to kind of have, to be able to see those strengths and know those strengths. And I think that's one of the big things why, like, and it's kind of funny. So just to kind of give a backstory, I did mention and have mentioned that in my intro, even though it may have passed. Like, so Gary's my former college roommate. I've known Gary for many years. Obviously he's known me for way longer than most people know me. So one of the fun things was, as we were talking, when we would meet up for lunch, he mentioned that he was doing this, and I kind of like it made sense, but I kind of didn't understand. And then the more we started talking, I actually one day we went to lunch with my wife and my daughter, and we were chatting. And as we were chatting, he brought up the whole aspect of knowing your strengths. And when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm like, I wonder if there's something for high school students. And then at the same time, I also was like, I'm like, why didn't I ever take anything like this? I'm like, how awesome would it have been for me to know what my strengths are, for me to be, I'm like, what better way to like use those things to be able to, for me to figure out those things. And so we actually had, my daughter actually was one of like, was like I guess a guinea pig, or she got to take a version of the test to see what her top 5 strengths were, because I'm like, she's about to go into college. And it's one of those where I'm like, what, like, kind of like what Gary mentioned, is like, what better way to not have, what better aspect to have like a roadmap, or at least know, hey, these are things that I can improve on, and possibly even build upon these strengths that I have and that I'm naturally good at, that I can actually be, that would maybe lead me to be successful. and happy, And so I was like, man, this is great. And I jokingly said to him, I said, I want to take this because I want to know what I am, or what I think I am, or what my strengths may be, or what my talents are. And so I got to take the test. And like you said, it's very there are moments, it doesn't give you much time. It's like 20 seconds to go, and I literally would read each one out loud and just kind of be like, okay, where do I lean towards? On some of them I was like neutral, because I was like, oh, I'm kind of could be this, or I'm more this. And then at the end I did take it did give me a top 5. And I laughed because some of them are things. I mean, I'm not gonna lie. Like, when I see this, like, my number one strength was positivity, and I laugh because I'm like, how is that a strength? But at the same time, I hear it so often that it kind of would have surprised me if I wasn't, because that's something that I get a lot of from people when it comes to me. Um, so yeah. So I mean, if you want, we can definitely chat about my, kind of give people an idea of, and just to kind of like how these like strengths all kind of combined or kind of work to kind of give. Like you mentioned, I know mine are positivity, I'm woo, I'm developer, and I'm strategic, and then communications was my fifth one. um and so it's very interesting as I read through them and get like the emails of what they are, of what my skills are and what I do. And then also, it was very interesting when you did say how, when you showed me yours and the comparison of ours together, how it's almost like the polar opposites in some ways.
Hmm.
But I will say
Complementary is a better
complimentary.
term.
It is complimentary, and I will say that it is absolutely 100% true, because I will safely say, in my life story, when they do a movie, Gary will somehow be in the movie, because the first clothing brand I ever created was because of Gary. I had a clothing brand that was a UCF based one. I had this idea, and he literally was like, well, why don't and I had this idea, and I went everywhere saying, hey, I got this shirt idea. I wanted to do like a parody NWO shirt. And I was like, what? And I was like, hey, I want to do this. And I went to all these places, and I said, hey, I just want free shirts. Like, you make it. Here's the idea. You make it. And I just want free shirts. And no one wanted to make it. And so he was like, well, why don't you do it? And he literally, like, that opened the Pandora's box on it. Same thing, kind of like how Deli Fresh Shreds became, because of the fact that I literally had a love for doing clothing when I was doing the merchandise, which then made me realize, like, hey, I kind of like this. I kind of like this idea of coming up with ideas and developing them, and making something. So in many ways, Gary kind of got me into which obviously you see all the clothes behind me. He got me into this in a way.
Well, first of all, we couldn't have taken this assessment when we were in high school because it hadn't come out yet. That's how old we are and how long we've
Yes.
known each other.
Yep.
Um, but I think that's a perfect example, Biggie, of you knowing your strengths and me knowing my strengths. Even at the time, as recent college grads,
Yeah.
I have ideation as my number one. That to me, and I think it's healthy and helpful for people to learn how to tell their story about their strength. Like Gallup has this framework called name it, claim it, aim it. Name it is kind of learning it, understanding the definition. Claim it is kind of taking ownership of the parts of it that apply to you and speak to you, and kind of reflect your own personal life experience. And then aiming it is living it, setting goals based on it, using it to help you in your everyday life, using it to share with other people. We were talking about that before. Like, how do you let other people that you work with know? I have a board in the back of my office that has everyone's strengths on it. I have it on the back of my desk. When I'm meeting with my staff, if something comes up, I can pull that up. I have it in my email signature. That can annoy some people. Some people have it on like the placard outside their office. People have it on coffee mugs. And so it's helpful to know the strengths of the people that work with you, because when we were just kind of young bucks, not knowing what the world was like and how you could get a t-shirt made, my ideation is like, oh, I have an idea. I have another idea. My
Yeah.
head's like those old popcorn poppers from when we were kids, where it's just
Yeah.
the globe and you put the oil and the popcorn in and they're just bouncing everywhere. That's my brain when someone says, do you have an idea? A lot of those ideas are burnt. A lot of those ideas don't pop, but the ones that pop, and are beautifully salted, those are good ideas that I can share with someone, but then I know myself that I don't have executing themes in my top 5. I only have one in my top 10. And so I need someone to take that idea and operationalize it, to pitch it to other people, to make it happen. And I'm very satisfied if something that I think I got a free shirt out of it. Um,
You
so
designed it. It's like
yeah,
one
I
of
mean,
those where like,
I was on Microsoft Paint, like
yeah,
pixel by pixel, ripping off the NWO logo and making it say UCF.
UCF. Yeah.
But I mean, maybe I had a little bit of creative skill that allowed me to make it. But if you said, okay, now can you come with me to a bunch of local retailers and help me pitch them? I'd have been like, no, that's not me. Um, that's not what I'm good at.
Yeah.
My dad and my grandfather were both car salesmen. I did not inherit that influencing gene to be able to get someone to do something.
Yeah.
Um, I can do it, but it's harder for me. I'd much rather partner with someone who it's easier for. So when I coach someone or when I'm working with a group, I really want them to spend time before we would even meet digging into their report. And, it's like a high school kid. Like, how many kids are going to do their homework? Not 100%. Same thing when we do like staff development. Not everyone's going to take to it. Some people are immediately like, what is this corporate mumbo jumbo? Why am I doing this? I don't think this means anything. And that's okay. I think this is a tool. This is a tool in the toolkit to help you understand yourself. It's not the only tool. It's not
Yeah.
the only thing that's going to give you insight into how you work, because it doesn't consider your education, your hard skills, your life experience, your culture, your background. This is about your patterns of thinking and how that can turn into performance. And so if I was working with you, I might ask you some questions. I would coach you. I would try to find out, hey, what's a problem you're trying to solve?
Yeah.
What's something in your business that just isn't going the way you want it to go? And how could we then take a look at your strengths? I, as someone who has some expertise, I don't know it all, but I have the credential to be able to say, and I use my ideation talent for this a lot. Like the Steph Curry analogy I gave you, I have analogies like just flowing out of my brain. So I could try to connect to something that helps it make sense for that person
Yeah.
so it sticks, right? I mean, we know like memories stick when they have a story attached to it. So if I can help you come up with your own story of, hey, Biggie, where does woo come out for you? I mean, I see you on Instagram and you're at some local market and people have their sandwich bag and the shirt that they just bought and they're smiling and you're asking them about their story and where they're from. Like, you love that. And I can
Yeah.
see it in you. That's your superpower. If you were finding yourself stuck in some other facet of your work or of your business, we might take a look at developer. We might take a look at strategic and say, hey, let's share some of the definition of this. How could this help you? When I coach people, I coach the person. I don't coach the problem. I'm not an expert. You're the expert,
Yeah.
but I can help you understand yourself better. And it's all, again, positively framed. All these talents are good. You talked about positivity. Um, Positivity is a great talent to have on a team, right? People's morale is down. I mean, right now I'm feeling your positivity. I'm not always this bubbly and excited, but I get to spend a lunch hour with Biggie.
Yeah.
And
I love
so
it, dude.
you bring that out of people by something you might not even be able to explain.
Yeah.
Like, you don't understand why. It's just a magnetism or just something around your aura. And you have the positivity thinking that allows you to think, it's cliche, but the cup is half full.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're on a project team and you're with a bunch of engineers and some people are more neurotic and they're negative and they're like, I don't think this is going to work. You're the coach that's going to call a 30-second timeout, pull out the clipboard. Hey guys, let's reset. Let's think about this in another way. I have faith in you. You can do it. And then they're going to like, chest bump and run back out on the field, and they're going to finish whatever that engineering task is. That oversimplifies things.
No, it makes
But
sense though.
that's how you can utilize that talent, and I'm sure you do all the time.
Yeah, no, and I do, and I think people see that, and it's. But I will say sometimes it's interesting. Um, especially like, and I think that's kind of one of the big things I think that I appreciate about this is because there are people who are not like, I have no problem doing being in front and center and doing those things. There's others that are like, hey, and that's kind of the big thing. Like, there may be like, hey, I'm skillful, I'm very skillful, and I'm very artistic. However, I'm very introverted and I don't want to have that interaction. So then that's kind of where you need to figure out like, okay, well, if that's not, what is another way that I can do these things? Because I don't like, I know many brands that don't want to be a face or anything, or in it, they just want to be like, just buy my product and
Yeah.
I don't want to be the face of it. Me, I'm like, I'm front and center. I have no problem.
You
I
are
want
the
you to know.
bread. The bread
Correct.
is based
That is
loosely on Anthony
correct.
Bencomo.
And that's how I look at it, and that's how I look at it. But, so I get it. And it's very interesting because you do see that. But I also think that's one of the beauties of being able to, when you partner and finding those other elements of what are the other pieces of the puzzle that fit, that you can partner with and be like, hey, I know that this is not, I don't, maybe like we'll go with, it's not a weakness, but I'm not as strong as I should be, but you are, and I can use that, and we can kind of harness that power together to kind of succeed on doing and accomplishing things.
Yeah, some people in the strengths community think the term weakness is like, don't, it's kryptonite, don't touch that. I think it's okay. It's how we talk, right? We
Yeah.
don't focus on our weaknesses. We don't. I mean, I've taken the assessment. We talk about your top five. Because I'm a coach, it unlocks my full 34. I didn't know it, my full 34 in order until several years after I first took the assessment. And I don't recommend people look at their full 34 until they've got their top five down pat. Because what do? It's like when you got a test
Yeah.
back in middle school, like you're looking for the ones you got wrong. You're going down the list and going, what did I mess up? And you're not
Yeah.
thinking about what did I do well. And that's human nature, but this is all intended to be framed positively. And so I know my number 34 is includer. I know my number 33 is communication. I know my number 32 is woo. And so what I tell people when I coach them, I say, I'll give you an example. I don't like to talk about myself too much, but I have this business that it would be helpful for me to network with certain types of organizations. I joined a local networking group. I don't love walking into a room of 20 strangers and handing my business card and yuck it up and, hey, how you doing? Tell me about yourself. After I'm done with that, I want to just like dive into
You're exhausted.
the frozen tundra of a frigid lake and just like reset my brain. Um, but I have strategic as a talent. Well, strategic allows me, it gives me kind of an advantage where I can think of, if I'm playing chess, like 3 or 4 different ways I could go to, get the king. And those come easy to me. And it's kind of the fork in the road. And then there's another prong. And so I think about, hey, if that's not something I'm comfortable with, what are some other ways I could still accomplish this goal? I could come on the Lunch with Biggie podcast. I can maybe start ramping up on LinkedIn, which makes me want to puke sometimes. Pardon the imagery, but I wish people on LinkedIn. This is one of my main things I talk about in my workshops. I call it T-LARPing. You ever heard that term?
No.
No, because I made it up. It's talk like a regular person. Nobody on LinkedIn talks like a regular person. Like if I was talking to you, called you after work, I wouldn't be like, Anthony, I am thrilled to announce that I just got a new certification. I'm very pleased to share this with my network. Like no one talks like that.
Yeah.
You talk like your cover letter when you're applying for a job. So I try to share with people that as a coach, I'm just going to talk like a regular person. I'm not going to be inappropriate, but I'm going to share with you some observations and some insights that there's a lot of resources out there. There's a lot of great coaches. There's podcasts. There's books. I take a different spin on some things because I think I have the experience of I work with millennials now. I work with Gen Z. They need you to talk like a real person, or else they'll just kind of sniff you
Zone
out
you
real
out.
quickly as like, this person's a professor. They're lofty academic. They don't know what they're talking about. So I really think it's helpful to get help. It's really helpful to like get some self discovery, whether it's this tool, whether it's me, whether it's someone else. It's just a great opportunity to know a little bit more about yourself, and whether you're a creator, a small business owner, or you're applying for a job. You work in recruiting. What's
Yeah.
someone going to ask you, tell me about your
What are
strengths?
your strengths? Yeah.
Well, I
Always
mean,
a popular one.
yeah, I hate asking that question. I
That's the
never do.
worst.
But people will ask it, and you're always giving your opinion, right? You're saying, well, I'm a good team player and I'm motivated and boo. What if you could give them some science, right? What if you
Yeah.
could give them some facts? I've taken the Clifton Strengths Assessment, and my number one strength is actually ideation. And when I looked at this job, I saw some opportunities where I could help you enhance this from a creative standpoint. And my vision is this. And that's something I've had success in the past utilizing in my last job. Now that employer is going to go, oh, wow, you're not just, blowing smoke up money. You know what?
Yeah.
You actually like have some evidence.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a tool. When I said at the very beginning, it gives you a language. Um, I can annoy some people because I'll be at dinner and my wife's like, "Why are you taking so long to order dinner?" We just have a very different way of ordering off a menu, and I'm like, "Well, I have deliberative talents, which means I have to carefully assess options and make sure I'm making a pro con list." She's like, "Just get the chicken parmesan." And I'm like, okay, I'll get the chicken parmesan. But like, that's how my brain works. That's how my boss's brain works. He's super deliberative. And so the rest of my team knows that Gary and Jim are going to take a long time. We're doing it to actually protect the reputation of our organization and make sure we're keeping people safe and that we have all the ducks in a line. But if they're a little bit impatient, but they know that we have deliberative as a talent, they're not going to have those negative inferences or those stereotypes. The Gallup organization calls them barrier labels, right? Um, Someone with positivity, people might go, "Oh, that's Biggie. He's just got his head in the clouds. He's all like fuddy duddy.
Yeah.
He doesn't understand how the real world works. He's always saying things will go well. Well, sometimes things don't go well." Well, no, if someone knows that that's actually the way you're wired, then they're going to go, okay, actually, his positivity helps us because we're doing some really tough stuff. And yeah, we have to make difficult decisions, but he helps balance us. And
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to think about complementing each other and sharing your talents with the people you work with, that you're in an organization with, that you live with. Because then we get less frustrated with each other. It's like, oh, okay, he's a woo or he has woo talents. That's why he wants to come talk to me every 5 minutes in my office. I've worked with people who have woo, and it's like they come in my office and they just want to chit chat. And I'm like, I used to think they were just a jabberjaw, but now I understand that's the way their brain works, and they just have to express things externally.
Mm-hmm.
Great, I'm a good listener. Let's do it, and this is going to make us better.
Yeah, no, I get that. So let's talk about, so like you're listening to this, the folks are listening to this as they're listening, and they're like, well, I want to get an assessment. Like, I want to figure out like how do they go about doing that. Like, I know they can, tell them how that aspect of it, and obviously we'll have in the show notes, and I'll have how people can follow you. But I'm just kind of curious as they're listening now, like, is this something that they can just come to you and they can be like, hey, I want to take an assessment,
Mm-hmm.
and I'd love to do that, and then you can also also talk to them about, hey, maybe we could do some coaching, or kind of go over these things. Because obviously once you have it, it's a lot easier when you have someone who's like a tour guide, like, like a guide that actually can guide you to it, not to mention also coach you to kind of help you release and understand some of these things, these talents and these skills.
Yeah, all of those things, Biggie. Someone can go to gallup.com right now after they listen to this. They can pay Gallup, so I wouldn't get a cent of it, and that's fine. They could pay $24.99 for a top 5 assessment. Take about 45 minutes, answer about 177 questions. Gallup throws some other questions in there that are just based on general public opinion research that they want to know. And then you get your results. You get a top 5 report. You get a signature theme report, and you can just go to town learning about your talents. You can also purchase it through my web shop at GaryKN.com. I have a shop where I could get you a little bit of a discount because I'm a certified coach. And then I would get your results. I do free 30-minute consultations. So if someone gets their results, they bought it through me, and they want to just understand what my services are, understand what coaching is, we could talk about that. And then I typically, I have session packages on my website where someone can do coaching. Teams are really my bread and butter. Pretty much every week for the last couple of weeks, I've been doing 2.5 hour sessions with intact teams. from all different organizations, nonprofits, small business, educational organizations, people who work together every day, working with a municipality coming up where they were scheduling a retreat and they wanted to have some component of getting to know each other. And so I do kind of and I know some people shudder at like, oh, a corporate retreat and a 2-hour team building session. Great. Like, that's not going to be fun. I promise you, if it's not fun, like, I held a very cutthroat Uno flip contest in my last session that like got pretty heated. I had to use my refereeing skills to resolve some of the conflict there, but people got to see their talents come out. Competition is a talent, responsibility is a talent, focus is a talent, communication. And as they're playing this game, I'm having them spot the talents that they have. And then they go, oh, okay, I work with Biggie. And now I understand why he wants to win everything. He's got competition and it's just a burning desire inside him. And so I do these workshops. I do 2-hour, I do 4-hour, I do full day. I do organizational consulting where I would meet with a leadership team or a manager. And I do one-on-one 30-minute coaching at the outset with each person that's going to be in my workshop where they can learn about their talents so they don't go into it cold. Because I know the look, I've been teaching college classes for 15 years. I know when you haven't done your homework. I see the glazed look on your eyes. I see you averting your eyes when it's like, oh, shit, I didn't do that. So I can do those sorts of sessions. It could be one time. There's a group I worked with a couple weeks ago, and they're like, when can we schedule you next? Where it's just managers only. And it's helping people who lead others use their strengths to be better managers. There's a whole set of research on what people want out of their leaders. There's a lot of data that Gallup shows about people, they don't leave jobs, they're leaving managers. And if we can equip managers away from the old school approach of like, I was good at this and now I'm elevated and I'm just going to manage your time. And, but I wasn't ever taught to coach people. I can teach managers how to coach because coaching, whether again, you're the wellness coach or the success coach or the defensive backs coach or the linebackers coach or whatever kind of coach you need, we know that can be successful. We know sometimes it's about motivation, sometimes it's about reframing, sometimes it's about teaching people how to encourage. Those are all things that with Kay and Ambler, my consulting company, we can help you with. Whether it's just a short chat and someone wants to take the assessment and learn more about it. That was my experience. I learned about it. I went through a week-long session, and then I just sat with it for like 2 years. And then I started to dive back into it when I got an opportunity to do more organizational development. So however someone wants it to experience it, I don't have a lot of influencing talents. I don't sell people on my services. I just try to explain what we do and hope that it can be helpful for whatever they're hoping to accomplish.
No, I love that. So I have usual 2 questions. We got 2 more questions. One is, what advice do you have for someone wanting to start something?
My advice would be to get to know yourself. Just a lot of the themes we've been talking about. Self-discovery is so important. I said it before, but you might see someone on Shark Tank or you see someone on Instagram and they've got a paid ad and you're like, oh, wow, how could I get to be where they are? And I think sometimes people move too fast and they start to go in all different directions. And maybe they're burning time, maybe they're burning resources, maybe they haven't set goals. There's a lot of research that shows, I think a lot of people know what a SMART goal is, making sure your goal is specific and measurable and achievable and realistic. And we put a time deadline on it. Gallup has research, and I've worked with teams that demonstrate if you insert your talents, your top talents into that SMART goal. So for example, if you said, by using my strategic talent by next month, I'm going to, reach out to these 3 people and I'm going to get one of them to be the next guest on my podcast. You're more likely to do it because doing strategic things makes sense to you.
Yeah.
If there was something at the bottom of your list, your number 34, or for me, if it was 34 is includer for me. So for includer, I have to work hard at this because I work with teams. My natural tendency is I could do this by myself. I get an idea and I can just go with it. I don't need to pull everyone in. And I've learned over time that's not a good way to teach other people what I know.
Yeah.
So it's really, I have to force myself to include others. But if I set a goal like, hey, I'm gonna start a new incentive program. I'm gonna start a gathering every week at lunch. We're gonna have a potluck. I would fail at that because I'm just not good at that. But I can go to someone else on my team who is good at that. And then it's not, hey, I'm asking you to do something that you don't want to do. You know that person on your team that's like, I get to organize that. Awesome. So my advice would be that, and just make sure whatever you're looking to do, whatever business you're starting, it does good. I'm about positive psychology, but I'm also about putting good things into the world. So if your clothing brand makes people happy, and serves a need, that's great. If you want to do something that's just like to burn resources and make a little money off of it, I mean, people are going to do that. Capitalism is capitalism. I'm for it, but I think it should be framed in like, well, is this thing that I'm doing going to help people?
Yeah.
And if so, yeah, run forward and run through the tape.
No, I love that, dude. I love that. What? Okay, so I know you've mentioned it, but we're gonna put it in a little spot here. Where can people follow you? Where can they learn more about you? And then kind of be able to go online and be able to kind of interact with you, read your blog, and all that stuff. Where are some areas so that I'll put that in the show notes as well, so that they could see it. But if they're listening while we're talking, where can they get more information about you and Kane Ambler Consulting?
Kane Ambler. Kane Angler is my fishing company.
Oh, very good. Good.
Ambler. This quick story about
Yeah,
Kane
tell me
Ambler.
about that. Tell me about that.
Some people think like, well, who's Ambler? You're Kayan.
Yeah.
I think I mentioned my grandfather owned a car dealership, and in South Florida, it was one of the first independent car dealerships. And my dad was in the business, and they sold the business to Alamo Rental Car when I was a little kid. So fortunately, I did not have the opportunity to go into the car business. But I was looking to register my company with the state. I just searched in the state business directory Kayan, and my grandfather's company came up. It's obviously not been around since the 1980s, and it was called Kayan Rambler AMC. The Rambler was a popular car. It would be like
Yeah.
the Toyota Camry of today, Camry. And so I was like, "Ooh, maybe I should pay homage to my grandfather, who's no longer alive, but was an incredible businessman. He was talented. He was an artist. Just learned so much from him." And I was like, I can't name a business where I'm going to be talking for a living Rambler. Like, no one's going to hire the person who's just going to, I mean, you may have heard on this podcast that I can ramble a little bit, but I don't want to put that right out there. So I was like, oh, what rhymes with Rambler? And then using my ideation talent, I kind of thought about how I do my best thinking taking long walks. Before this podcast, I took like a 2-mile walk, just ambling around the neighborhood. An ambler is someone who just kind of walks around slowly. So Kayan Ambler hit. You can find me on my website, GaryKayan.com, GaryCahen.com. Really, the only social media that I have a public presence on is LinkedIn. You can follow Kayan Ambler Consulting on LinkedIn, or you can connect with me, and I throw up my content, my blog that you mentioned. I like writing a blog that takes kind of the corporate stuffiness out of some of the definitions. I love the people at Gallup. They're brilliant data scientists, but sometimes things are just very academic. And so I like to write a blog about the talent of context and how it makes me think about flux capacitors and Marty McFly going back to 1955 and learning about his parents and how that informed him about what was great about 1955 and what was great about 1985. If you don't like pop culture or sports references or music references, maybe my blog's not for you.
Won't enjoy it, but yeah. But if you do,
if you do,
like, I enjoyed your Inside Out 2 one as well. I thought that was
individualization.
Yes, I love that. I love that one as well. And you also have quite a bit of sports ones, which I appreciate. I have another one because I've never. This is one of those where I'm like, I got you on the hot seat, so I might as well ask you. Do you have a fond or favorite memory of us as roommates?
Ooh, what's this rated?
You could whatever. I mean, well,
we were good kids. Like,
we were.
There was never the RA was never called to our apartment. I'll say 3 things. One is the first time I met you was before we were roommates, and our mutual friend Andrew, who we're still friends with. Yep. We were at a UCF basketball game, and there was a UCF Superfan contest. And we saw this guy with a cape and his face painted black and gold, and he was running up and down the aisles with signs. And we were like, that guy's awesome. Like, that's the UCF super fan. And that's back when if you got 150 people at a basketball game, you were lucky.
Yeah.
And then the next year, I'm moving into my sophomore on campus residence hall apartment, and I move in, and there you are. And Andrew was helping me move in, and we just looked at each other, and he goes, "It's the UCF superfan guy." And so, like, we knew we had that in common. I think there was a time where maybe your woo wasn't firing on all cylinders, and we were going to have a Super Bowl party. And this is like your early love of sandwiches. You had the idea, like our other roommate who was in the Marines was going to go to Best Buy and buy like a big projection TV. Like at the time, we were going to watch, I don't even know what Super Bowl it was. And you were going to make meatball sandwiches.
I wanted meatball subs. I remember this.
Yeah. And you went and bought the bread, the meatballs. You had this big pot. You had them cooking all day long. And for whatever reason, nobody we invited showed up.
No one came. It was just us eating meatball subs.
It was like 4 of us with enough meatball subs to, like, I don't know, feed a small football
40.
team.
I want to say at least 40 subs could have been had for sure.
And we like we Joey chestnutted the hell out of those. Like, we didn't dip the bread in the water and then eat that and then eat the meatballs independently. But I can't say how many we had, but that was a fun memory.
I do remember that. I do remember the huge pot too. I definitely remember that. That is a good one.
Yeah, and then, the last thing I'll share is we had this tradition. We just kind of had a ragtag group of people. It was you and I and our friend John Sheldon, who I still talk to pretty much every day. And we had a fourth roommate who was a little bit more reserved. He kind of kept to himself. He was a little different of a guy. But the one thing he connected with us on was every Wednesday night we ordered Hungry Howie pizza and we watched Dawson's Creek. And, if you weren't around in like the late 90s, like we probably didn't fit the demographic of who should have been into Dawson's Creek. But I mean, you had Dawson, you had Pacey, you had Joey. I mean, I still see, what's his name? Josh Jackson. Yeah. I still see him on shows and I'm like, Pacey, I got to watch it. Like, I've watched everything he's in.
Yeah. He's on a cruise ship. It's like a cruise ship doctor show is what it is.
I saw that commercial. Yeah. My wife was very excited about it. What was great about it was there was this, again, a kid who was really nice. What's his name? Ryan.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He, just one of the styles at the time was kind of dressing a little goth and like, he kind of dressed. Goth. Yeah, he kind of dressed like Edward Scissorhands without the scissor hands.
Yes.
And, again, nice kid. We connected with them. But he would stay to himself in his room, except when Dawson's Creek was on and we were eating Hungry Howie's Wacky Wednesday pizza. And he would come out and he would just be like one of the roommates. And we found the code to unlock his like social connectivity. And that felt so rewarding at the time.
No, I agree I do. I totally remember that. And I remember the few times that we actually would go eat at like a restaurant together and it was like the 4 of us and you would look at us and you would be like, what is this? I was like, who are you guys? I totally remember that. And then no, I love that. I think that's awesome. My other fond memory obviously is, and it's one of my favorite pictures that I think you and I've ever taken is you and I got to go watch because we both, one of our loves is sports and is the fact that we got to go watch when UCF defeated Alabama. There's like one of my favorite pictures is a picture of you and I pointing at the scoreboard and just, cheering our minds because it was definitely a crazy time to be there. So I definitely remember that.
Yeah, that was quite the road trip, and those the prehistoric times. And I'll have to say, like, I don't really follow college sports and football as closely as I did back then. And it's kind of like, because how could you top it? How could you top like what we got to experience that day and a bunch of other days? So, and you always, it's more exciting when you were the same age as the players.
Yes.
Whereas now they're like 30 years younger than us, and
they're kids.
Yeah. So, but I mean, those are some great memories.
No, man, I love it. I definitely appreciate you taking the time. I thought you'd be a great guest for many reasons. One, I always enjoy it. You and I always have great conversations, but I also think that like, this is one of those things where I truly feel that, if I knew, or it's one of those things where I think everyone needs to have in their tool belt to be able to know what their strengths are and then be able to harness that. And I think that's one of the big things about it. And you do really a great job, because he did spend some time, and we're going to be having him work with my daughter as well, because I want him to be able to harness those things. And the sooner I can do it with, especially with, like, my 16-year-old, the better. But even myself, like, I want to be able to kind of figure out ways of where else can I, like, use my strengths, and kind of maybe come up with goals or and ideas to be able to go. And I think everyone needs some form of coaching, some form of mentorship. So I think it's definitely a great resource. So I definitely appreciate you having lunch with me today, for sure.
Yeah, go make a grilled cheese and pay close attention to those edges and tell me what you think.
For sure, always the edges. And then that's one of the things Palm says. Palm says you always put the condiments all the way to the edge, all four corners. Thank you. And that's our show for today. Thank you so much for Gary Cahan of Cahan Ambler Consulting for being on and having lunch with me. Definitely make sure to check him out online, GaryCahan.com. And if you enjoyed the show, definitely make sure to either share it, subscribe, tell your friends, do all that stuff that everyone wants you to do. At the same time, if you want to support my brand, check out Deli Fresh Threads. Do some shopping. If you do have a grilled cheese, heck, I want to see a selfie of it, and make sure to tag us on it. But thank you. Until next time, keep eating sandwiches and follow your passion. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Peggy.